Good morning. I thought I'd do a quick video about myself and who I am and what qualifies me to give you all this information about the Camino. Um, what is my story? Who do I represent? And why am I qualified? What is my goal? So, those are some of the things I'm going to talk about really quickly. I grew up on a farm in Central California. My grandfather farmed for other people and he also owned his own property. I was constantly in the way of chemicals. I can remember coming in off the tractor with just my eyes showing and DDT covering me. I can remember playing in the spray when the planes went over to crop dust or to spray for mosquitoes. As kids, we thought it was funny. We'd just dance around in that spray. So by the time I became an adult, my body was pretty overburdened with chemicals. I went to work for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and again, I used chemicals in that job. And then later, after my kids were grown and gone, I went to work at a hospital on an oncology ward, and there I was again exposed to chemicals to chemotherapy. Um, in 2004, 2005, I got really, really sick, and I could hardly get out of bed. I ached all over. I had brain fog. I had constant headaches. My hands would swell up. I called them my football hands. And I was just sick as hell and couldn't figure out what was wrong. I went to many doctors. They misdiagnosed me with many, many things. And in the end, I found a specialist in Coos Bay, Oregon, who diagnosed me with multiple chemical sensitivities. This made a lot of sense to me. I had started using the computer to put in my symptoms, and that kept popping up. So when he diagnosed me, it was a validation. Um, he gave me two choices: chemical chelation or walking long distance. I researched chemical chelation and discovered that many people who went through chemical chelation had either kidney or liver problems afterwards. It really ruined them because basically what they do is give you another chemical which causes all those chemicals to dump on your kidney and liver. And yeah, it wasn't an option for me. So then I started researching long distance walking. Of course, here in the United States, we have the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, and neither of those seemed like a good option for me because I wasn't prepared to carry huge backpacks, and there was so much planning ahead for your food and your sleeping arrangements. And then Joe, who was my partner at the time and was Catholic, said, "Have you ever heard of the Camino Santiago?" We had been to Spain, Portugal, all over Western Europe, but I had never heard of the Camino. He told me it was a Christian pilgrimage, that it was approximately 500 miles long, that it took 6 weeks to walk. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I love Spain and Portugal. So I did some research again and decided that that's what I wanted to do. And I asked Joe if he would go with me because I was kind of afraid to go alone on my first Camino. So in 2006, we walked the Camino. I carried my backpack. We walked all the way. Um, we walked for 6 weeks, and by the time I got home, I felt normal again. I was well. I had basically recovered from the illness. But over time, after we got home, I started getting symptoms again, and it was then that I realized I really need to do this at least once a year. So, it got to the point where I couldn't afford to go every single year. And I knew of a woman whose name was Sil, who had something called AMA walkers out of South Africa. And I talked to her and I said, "Hey, if you ever need someone to take a group for you, I'd like to do it because I can't afford to go on my own. And this would give me the opportunity to go." So in 2012, Sil told me, "Go for it." And I took two groups. Joe went with me. It was like trial by fire. I was not a good guide. I didn't know how to deal with difficult people. I'm sure I was frustrating to the people that I took, although some have stuck with me and decided they really liked it. But I was just inexperienced and I really didn't know what I was doing. And she kind of just threw me out there and said, "Go." Um, but in the end, I learned a lot from those two groups and decided that, this is something I could do on my own. And so I started Annie Walkers. I asked Sil, "Is it okay if I just do my own group from America?" She said, "Sure, go for it." I actually think she had had a complaint from one person on the Emma Walker's trip, which didn't sit too well with me because, there's always two sides to a story. But anyway, um, I decided to start my own group, Annie Walkers. And Joe and I started taking groups in the spring, sometimes in the autumn, sometimes once a year, sometimes twice a year. And pretty much since then, we've walked every year, either in the spring, in the autumn, or both. So there have been years when I've gone alone, but most of the time I take a group, and I'll tell you why. I plan out the trip for the 3 weeks. It's usually 3 weeks. We walk from Saint Jean Pied de Port to either Viana or Laranjo, and then I bus people to Burgos, to Leon, to Astorga, and then we walk the tail end of the trip. A lot of people can't get off 6 weeks to go, and this gives them the experience of going over the Pyrenees and the option of getting their Compostela, and it works out well for people. It also gives me the opportunity to go 2 or 3 weeks early and walk by myself. And in doing that, I've walked a lot of different routes. I've walked the Camino Frances now over 20 times. I've walked the Camino Aragonese. I've walked the Madrid route. Joe and I walked from Lourdes. I've walked from Malaga. This year we're talking about walking from Montserrat. We've walked the Portuguese route, the northern route. So we've walked a lot of the different routes. Let's see, in 2020, it was actually 2019, Christmas Eve, I went to bed and it was cold. I was in the desert at Joe's desert house, and I ran my hand up my side just because I was chilly, and I found a lump in my breast. Turns out I had breast cancer. I was diagnosed early 2020. We had planned to walk in March. COVID was just starting up, and when I talked to my oncologist, she said, go ahead and walk. I'll put you on letrozole. It'll be good for you. By the time you get back, we can do your surgery, and you'll be feeling better. So we went ahead and went to Spain 2020, and after 12 days of walking, we had to come home. It was an emergency flight back, and there's a story about that on my blog that you can read. In April, I had a double mastectomy, and in June, my mother took a third fall down in California. I had to drive down just a couple of months after my double mastectomy, sell her house, pack her up, move her back up to Oregon, where I have family, buy a house up here, and settle in to care for my mother. And that's where I am now. We had planned an Annie Walker's walk for April 2021, but COVID put an end to that. A lot of the people that were in that group stuck with me for our group walk in 2022. So that's kind of my story. I've walked so many times. I have a lot of experience on all the different routes. I don't represent anybody. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm booking lodging for 8 people and backpack transport for 8 people. I factor in my own airline ticket and my own food, and I divide that by 7. So I'm going for free. You guys are paying my way, and you're getting a hell of a deal because you're going to go walk the Camino for under $2,000. It works really well for everybody. My goal is just to help pilgrims who want to go, who are maybe afraid to go on their own the first time. And what happens a lot of times is people will go with me, and then they know the ropes. So they'll go back and finish the middle section, the Meseta, which we don't walk, or go do another route. I'm not representing anybody except myself. And my goal in doing these videos isn't to write a book or to become famous, and that's why I've said these are not professional videos at all. This is just me talking to the camera. Because I really don't have any goal except to just walk the Camino every day for my health. I mean, every year for my health, and also to help other people who want to go. Just let them pick my brains. And I know that the Camino's kind of become a fad since I began walking in 2006, and that kind of ebbs and flows. And I think a lot of people are chomping at the bit because of COVID. They didn't get to go, and now they're all wanting to go, and everybody's publishing books and videos, and that's okay. It's good to get a lot of different opinions, but I do have my own opinions, and I think they're valid. So I hope that you'll enjoy these videos, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask me, because I love sharing my knowledge about the Camino. I love sharing my experiences. And as long as I can walk, I will keep leading these groups. Now, this next year, I'm going to be in crappy shape because having had the mastectomy and the letrozole that they put me on, I've gained weight. I haven't been able to exercise like I usually do, and I'm going to be walking slow like a tortoise. But that's okay. The Camino's for everybody, and it's very healing for me. I hope it will be for you, whatever your goal. So that's it. If you have questions, put them down below or ask on the website, on the Facebook page. And that's it. Have a buen camino.